Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. A Man Can Dream, written by Willy Wonka. Sleep. Amongst the thousands of languages in the galaxy, the word translates reasonably well between most of them. There are some, like the HFY, who had a hard time first understanding it. Their homeworld was a rotational period of 3 hours. Night lasts as long as it takes to prepare to eat a good meal. Going unconscious as a natural body function is a concept that was foreign to them. Yet the idea of rest translated as easily as the periodic table. The phrase deep rest was all it took for them to grasp the fundamentals of sleep. They are a curious race, and so merely understanding the fundamental was not enough for them. The foreign concept of sleep attracted them like an explorer to an uncharted island. Some say the research and understanding of sleep should be left to those who, sleep. Others say that unattached and unbiased were perfectly suited to the task. Regardless of opinion, they have spread throughout the stars in search of complete understanding. And, for a while, they had it. Thousands of races catalogued, studied, and tested. Every part of sleep was understood and written down in a scholarly fashion. Then, an adventurous researcher traveled down the Orion Arm and outwards into the backwater that was mostly devoid of intelligent life. There, the researcher entered a small, isolated empire known as the Sol Republic. He was looking to collect data. What he found would not have a word in any of the 24 languages he spoke. Dream. The researcher was baffled. In his first interview of the new race, one of the humans, as they were called, described participating in events while asleep. How does one do that while unconscious? He stood in the primitive market contemplating the flow of bipeds that passed by his stand. Not a unique sight, but, he thought, perhaps a unique people. He went back to the spaceport inn and sat down heavily in the high gravity. He learned how to access the human's datanet. He was led to a data group called Wikipedia, of which he was impressed by the culmination of a knowledge and small empire had gathered. He was further impressed by the fact the race had progressed from exploration of their own world to interstellar empire in just under 1,000 years. Such a timetable was rare, even in the vast encyclopedia of the HFY's contacted species. Yet, despite the impressive amount of knowledge collected in a data group, he still did not understand the dream. The colony was small, being on the fringe of the empire, and so it had no scholarly institutions. But it was large enough to have a medical complex. From Wikipedia, the researcher knew human medicine was based on science and was as advanced as any other field. Thus, the researcher concluded this was where he could find someone to explain the dream. The researcher was directed towards a room, where he was told to wait. It had a nanobot-based diagnosis machine, a blocky bed, and a jar full of wooden strips. After a while, the door opened, and a xenomedical specialist was a tall and lithe man, relative to the rest of his species. Compared to the researcher, he was squat. He introduced himself as Solomon. Gaily, correct? Or am I butchering that? Gaily adopted an expression of horror. The specialist must have been good at his job, because despite never meeting a member of Gailey's race, he interpreted the expression correctly. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Butcher is a term we use when we pronounce a name incorrectly. I really need to stop saying that. Yeah, I see. Yes, my name is Gailey. Good. He checked his datapad. I hear you're having problems sleeping. No, I have questions about sleep that I hope you can answer. Solomon paused. Questions? I'm sorry, but we don't have your race and record. I can't answer any questions about your sleep. Not my sleep, but yours, Gailey replied. Mine? Solomon seemed at a loss, and vaguely disturbed. Yes. How can humans sleep and conduct activities at the same time? Solomon scratched his head. Well, what do you mean? Are you talking about sleepwalking or... His eyes lit up in understanding. Dreams! You're curious about dreams. You're not the first, you know. Gailey thought about that for a minute. The researcher's hunger for knowledge grew. Yes, I'm curious about dreams. I am a researcher. Solomon sat back. I see. Well, just so you know, I usually treat patients and answer questions about my race, not just the latter. but I suppose for a researcher I can spare a few minutes. Ask away. Guiley smiled, in his own way. What are dreams? How can a human be unconscious and do things at the same time? Solomon smiled. That's actually a pretty common question I get. You see, we're not actually doing those things. Our brain just makes it up. Guiley let that sink in. Makes it up? Yeah, human minds are very, compartmentalized. Not everything that happens within our consciousness. Sometimes, a part of our mind we're not aware of creates something of its own, separate from the part of our mind that is actually conscious. Guiley was only more confused, but as a researcher, he was used to it. So some of your thoughts, aren't your thoughts? Solomon laughed. It was apparently a joy that his species baffled the researcher. Pretty much. A good example is when we are convinced a shadow from an object is a person. The part of our mind that isn't us, our subconscious, decides it's a person. Then it tells our consciousness it is. We actually see a person for a fraction of a second before we realize it's just a shadow. Guiley blinked. He was only more confused. But how does that relate to a dream? Well, dreams are what happens when the subconscious, the part of us that isn't us, is given control of the mind. Guiley processed that. Solomon continued, It happens when we're asleep, so we don't actually go and do what our subconscious says to do. Guiley spoke. But you're unconscious, you're asleep. What is there to control? Solomon grinned again. He obviously explained this before, and this was the part where it got good. When we're unconscious, our minds create a world for our subconscious to play in. Guiley again processed that. Play in? Solomon nodded, still grinning. Like a child plays in a playground, exercising, experimenting, just like how a child might eat a flower to see what happens. In sleep, our mind simulates the situation to see what happens. Simulation? Guiley was spending all of his mental energy comprehending this, and it was a lot. Solomon continued, Yes, a simulation, like on a computer, how you test something without actually testing it. Sometimes it's what happens when I try to fight a Grevik mercenary. Other times it's what happens when my wife grows two heads, then the walls aren't walls, and I can put my hand through the table. What? Solomon laughed again, still with a mildly terrifying grin on his face. Exactly. Sometimes they don't make sense. Other times, though, they fit the world perfectly. But how? How do you create these dreams? Solomon lifted both shoulders in a gesture. Well, we still don't quite know. Guiley sat a little bit straighter. The seed of an idea was planted in his head. But the best I can explain it is our subconscious grabs past memories and current stimuli and tries its best to make sense of it, like how it turns a shadow into a person. Then it takes what it made and runs with it. Guiley's confusion began to fade, and understanding paired with awe began to take its place. So you mind is two. One is you, and the other thinks for itself. Solomon nodded, smiling. And these dreams, they are your subconscious creating a world and learning from it. Solomon's smile grew wider. And each part informs the other, giving you the knowledge gained through both the rational and irrational parts of your mind. Solomon slammed his hands together and laughed, smiling even wider. Yes, you understand. You are the first, you know. You beautiful bastard. Guiley tried his best to interpret that. He concluded it was a compliment. Solomon spoke through a massive grin. I've had tried so long to get that across. Most Xenos, they smile and nod and pretend they understand. But you, who are you? A Sekher. It was Solomon's turn to be awed. A Sekher? I've heard of you. Are you planning to send a research division to our little corner of the galaxy? I believe we are now. Solomon smiled. And thus began the golden age of man. The Sekher did not send just a research division to the Sol Empire. They sent their research, period. Every Sekher wanted a piece of the dream. It was fascinating, and rightfully so. Predictions, inventions, and even victory in battle had been created in sleep, of all things. Commerce followed the flood of inquisitive Sekher, and with that, the Empire of Sol swelled to encompass the entire Orion Arm with its influence. At one time, another empire attempted to steal the wealth of the Sekher. Humanity crushed them, and like that, the two races became like sisters. To this day, they are both intertwined as if they both started on the same rock in space. is a good match. Humanity provides the dream, the Seke provides the knowledge to make that dream come true. Many say man does not deserve this power, that humanity is nothing special, but they're wrong. A man can dream. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.